Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mummy, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Hey everybody, welcome. Today is Wednesday, November 8th. We're glad to have you all with us and excited to see everybody here. If you're watching on replay or the podcast, glad to have you with us. We have just finished a very successful boot camp here in Denver, and we are recovering from that. June and Amanda are out today, but we have Brianna here and we have Tracy here. Hi guys, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm happy to be on the other side of boot camp, ready to roll forward with you guys.
Good, good. And Brianna, I know you got to work with every camper beforehand, helping them with their scheduling. And that was a really useful tool. When they got to boot camp, they were ready to go. They had their schedules set. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
Good. Today, we're going to bring you up to date on results and other information around the country. We've got California bar results coming out Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So good luck to all of the Cal bar takers. We're also going to update you a little bit on next generation bar exam and some things that are happening there. And then we're going to get to student questions, and we've got a fair number. So we'll get through those, and Tracy and Brianna will help me answer those questions. Let me jump to talking a little bit about results. Now, most of the results from the July 2023 exam, it seems so long ago, doesn't it? Most of those are now in the books. We are still waiting for California, as I said, but I wanted to just let you know what's happening in terms of that last set of results that we got in. And they tend to follow the patterns that we've been seeing around the country. Alaska reported their results, 58% overall pass rate, 25% repeater rate, but again, on a very small number of people. So that's one of the states that returned results. Ohio was another state that returned results since we've been with you. Their overall pass rate was 73%, and their repeater pass rate was 33%. So that's pretty much in line with what we saw, about 1,000 bar takers in Ohio. Then Rhode Island only had 75 bar takers. It's hard to say much with that. 73% overall rate and a 58% repeater rate. So we're really down to just California and a couple of outlier states that haven't reported all their details. But essentially, we've got it wrapped up. The July exam is almost in the books. It's been a crazy season. I think the reality here is that we're seeing about a 30% repeater rate. That's what we got mostly across the country. I would expect a lower pass rate in California because it is the toughest exam. But here's the important piece. If you're a Cal bar taker, you're going to get your results on Friday night, and hopefully they're successful and you pass and celebrate, and we're all excited for you. If they're not successful, however, you do not have the luxury of wallowing. Unfortunately, you got to jump in and go. And if you're in our course, we'll enable your course right away. If you're not in our course, reach out to me right away and let's talk. You have enough time to prepare for February, but you can't wait very long, right? I think that's the real key here. And Brianna, you're our expert on scheduling, but am I saying that correctly?
Oh, the sooner the better. You don't have the luxury of like you said, wallowing, grieving, take the weekend, jump right back in on Monday, if not Sunday. You're still looking 20 to 25 hours of study time every week up until the exam. So it's still doable. You just can't wait.
Yeah. And if you're in our course, if you were not successful, send me your score results right away. I'll prepare videos for you with my recommendations. We hope that results are good for everyone. That's what we know about the July exam. I want to jump now to way ahead, which is the next generation exam, because there's so much being written about it out there. I know that most of you on the call today, or those of you that are listening, this probably doesn't affect you, but I think we've got an obligation to just keep you up to date on what's going on. The first thing we want to tell you, and I think the most significant thing, is that the NCBE has announced that the current bar exam structure and the next generation exam, which is a different exam, I mean, it's a wildly different bar exam, they're going to be offered concurrently for 2 full years. So that makes the current bar available to jurisdictions through the February 2028 administration. So some states will be doing what they're doing today all the way through February 2028. The first administration of the new form, called the Next Generation Exam, will be July 2026. And as of today, there are 5 states that have announced that they will join the next generation. And those states are Maryland, Missouri, and Oregon in July of 2026. Wyoming will offer it in July of 2027 for the first time. Connecticut has said they will go to the next generation, but not said when. So that's where we stand right now. Now, you might remember that a couple of weeks ago, I said Florida and California weren't going to do the next generation exam. I got a very nice email from the NCBE saying, don't be so quick on that. It may be that those 2 states will do it. And I thought that was an interesting response. There's nothing publicly to make me think that's going to happen. But the NCBE kind of pushed back to say, hey, don't say they're not doing next gen. So here's our mea culpa. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We're still waiting to see what happens. And then the last piece of information about the next gen exam is that the NCBE reversed course to add a subject that had been removed, which was family law or domestic relations. As I've said before, I think this is an attempt to appease some of the jurisdictions that felt like this was an important testable subject. They are going to put that subject back in. Anyway, that's what's going on with Next Gen Exam. We will be ready when it comes up in the early July 2026 for whatever those jurisdictions are. And Tracy, I know you're working on the Next Gen materials for us. It's going to be an exciting exam, but it does not affect anybody taking the bar today, right?
It does not. It does not. Don't get sidetracked on that. And don't hedge your bet by thinking that you'll just wait for that exam. We don't at this point know what that is going to look like. So it's a much better plan to put all of your efforts into passing this one.
Yeah. And along those same lines, Oregon, the state of Oregon announced yesterday that they are going to an alternate licensure program, which means that recent law graduates, actually new law graduates, can do 675 hours of study and work under a licensed Oregon attorney and submit their work in lieu of the bar exam. I want to be really clear about this. If you're watching today, you're not eligible, almost certainly, for that Oregon plan. It is for recent graduates, and we assume that means anybody that graduated last year or maybe this year and going forward. Now, Oregon is unusual in that they are allowing graduates of law schools outside of the state of Oregon to participate. But if you went to law school in New York and you're thinking, wow, I'll get licensed in Oregon, you have to find an Oregon attorney that's willing to work with you in New York and willing to let you do 675 hours of work for them and submit your work to them, and you had to have just graduated from law school. That's a pretty narrow grouping. In addition, Oregon has announced that they will continue to offer their bar exam. So if you've already taken the bar exam in Oregon and you're still taking it, and it's a UBE jurisdiction, you can continue to do that. They had about 500 bar applicants this year. I think the point here is that this is now the 3rd state to offer an alternative to the bar exam. But again, these are very narrow and they're not going to impact a whole lot of people. And frankly, by the time we get to next gen in 2026, I think the world's going to look very different. But I wanted to let everybody know that. I know that sometimes people think, oh, there's my way in. No, if you graduated before last spring, absolutely not. And then only if you can meet these very specific requirements. Easy to get distracted about this stuff. We don't want you to be distracted. We want you to be aware of what's going on. But when you hear those sorts of things, it's important. We did have a question that came up this week, and I'll just jump into it here. Somebody said, I want to get your thoughts on the Cal Bar Examiner's memo where they said they're considering doing away with the Cal Bar. That is equivocally untrue. There is no plan to get rid of the California bar exam. There may be some alternative licensure, maybe. There may be the next generation exam, maybe, but absolutely nothing has been decided. And this is the stuff that kind of scares me, right? It's hey, they're getting rid of the Cal Bar. No, I want to just be very clear. They are not getting rid of the Cal Bar. And if you haven't passed the Cal Bar, you still got to take it. That's the reality. Any thoughts, Brianna or Tracy, about this? Because I know there's a lot of stuff rumbling around in the ether about these things.
Well, I would say don't try to outdo the research that is being done by Jackson and the other coaches, and just rely on us for the most up-to-date information. You can make yourself so anxious looking at all these articles and thinking that they are all true and that it applies to you. We're here for you, and we have individual programs for each of you. So we'll keep you up to date.
Yeah, good. All right. So That's what's going on in the bar exam world. It is going to be, for those of you that remember during COVID, Brianna, I know you do, this feels like those COVID years, doesn't it? It's all just flying around and it's all weird.
It is. And my best piece of advice is just to turn off that noise. You've got to focus on you. You've got to focus on what you're doing right now. Focus on the next upcoming bar exam and try not to get lost in the weeds of what's going on. Tracy said, rely on us as your source of information and don't go down too many rabbit holes with all that or trying to game the system, because there's no sense wasting your time with all that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I wanted to, before we got to student questions, I wanted to just briefly recap boot camp, because I thought it was one of the most successful, maybe the most successful boot camp that I've ever done. And we've been doing them for probably a decade or so. And I wanted to share a little bit of the feedback that we got from some of our boot campers. We got some great emails. Thank you very much, all of you that were at for the nice notes afterwards. One of the students said, I wanted to thank you before I headed to the airport. I finished synthesizing the materials from boot camp, and all of these tools and sources of foundational whys about how it works, the constant encouragement, the shared stories, the fellow students, the fun meals. It was lovely and inspiring. Gratitude is an understatement. But here's the part I really loved. Instead of feeling full of overwhelm and fit, I feel full with stunning energy. I have a renewed excitement to embark on this study journey. Thank you for everything you did this weekend. That was a wonderful note. I appreciated that. And then Tracy, I know you got a great note from a student that was talking about your writing sessions being the golden ticket, because very few times the student said, do attorneys have the unique opportunity to have an experienced judge tell them what is preferred in a courtroom that can be translated into real world practice. The FLA writing method is so much better than IRAC. And then the student went on to say to Tracy, you have a great teaching disposition, which is true. You're not scary. You possess invaluable experience, and you're uniquely trained to transmit a lot of information to the boot campers. I cannot tell you how priceless your knowledge is for me, and it just clicked. That's cool. And we got a lot of those kinds of notes. That was great. We were very excited to get those. Thank you all. It was a great experience, wasn't it, Tracy?
It was. And having Amanda there too, to do some boots on the ground work on the MBE and the MPT really helped. But we saw a community being born in the boot camp that is going to be so important as you go forward into these last few months before your bar exam, or even if you're taking the bar exam next summer, even more. So there's just no substitute for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great experience for everybody. We had June doing her mindset coaching. Tracy was doing essay writing, as you heard. Amanda was doing MPTs and MBE. And
Brianna did the scheduling.
The scheduling, yes, everybody was involved. So just to tease this out here, we have had a number of people ask us about whether or not we could do a virtual boot camp before the February exam. And we are working right now to see if we can make that happen. And we'll let you know, but we are thinking about it. So just something to be aware of. All right. So that was boot camp. It was awesome. And I've now had a few days to recover. So that's also pretty cool. Let's jump into the questions that we've received this past week. And if you all have questions, if we've got time, we'll jump on those. Also, Tracy's going to talk to us today about what she called taking stock and a vision board. Excited to see that. Let me jump into questions. And Brianna, we got a fair number of questions in the past couple of weeks about scheduling and study. This is typical of the kind of question we got. Students said, my boss has agreed to provide better conditions for me so I can study for the next bar exam in February. I'm going to study for the bar mornings from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then I'm going to work for about 4 hours a day. And then I'm going to take some time during Christmas and New Year's, and I'm going to have 4 weeks to focus at the end solely on bar prep review. Needless to say, the student says, my motivation is there, but I need to work on expectations and benchmarks so that I can take full advantage of this opportunity. I wanted to just talk about that sort of idea of expectations. How would you respond to that student, Brianna?
Yeah, so this particular student is a prime example of the type of students who schedule a time management coaching call with me. The way we start that entire conversation is, what are your duties and responsibilities? What are your commitments that you can't get rid of? What are some things you can get rid of? Because the beauty about time management is that you know that you have a finite number of hours in a day. You've got 24 hours, and somehow you have to fit everything in that is going to be a priority to you. After that, on average, this varies a little bit by state to state, but on average, you've got about 250 hours of study time that you've got to put in. And that's going through that's before you get to testing. Okay. If you know you've got about 250 hours to get in, and you know you've got 24 hours a day, you've got to fit in all those other little commitments in. You've got to make your calendar, and you've got to divide that 250 hours by the number of weeks you have between now and the exam time. Then allow a couple of weeks to take a couple of practice tests and really hone in and fine tune your skills. That gives you the number of hours you got to be focusing in on for a week by week basis. That's going to give you your benchmarks. After you get your benchmarks and you know how many hours you need to be studying per week, you can really fine tune from there when you fit in hours you need for sleep, your work priorities, your individual time, because that's super important as well. You've got to fill your cup back up, and then also time to eat and all the other commitments that you have. And those are going to vary widely by the individuals. One of the number one things that we talk about is what students are willing to sacrifice. Because the way you live your life today isn't necessarily the way you're going to be living your life when you're studying for the bar exam. So that's something you've got to dig in, and you've got to be real with yourself of what are the things that you're willing to sacrifice in order to be able to make this bar exam your number one priority.
I was going to say, in this scenario where the law office is giving the student time to study, that's a wonderful way to start to do some of that prioritization. But I think the one thing I want to just emphasize, and I agree with everything you've said, Brianna, this student's going to have the month before the bar exam, and we hear that a lot. This course is not built on cramming. Having that big time at the end is not as valuable as you think it is. I would much rather, frankly, that you work steadily from now and not try to do it all in the last 4 weeks. Do you agree?
Oh, I completely agree. And what's funny, when we will build a pre-scheduled vacation into your schedule, if that's necessary. But when we talk about, oh, I've got this and I've got that, and let's take a teacher, for example, who's going to have a break. I'm not going to build that time in. You've got to make sure that your schedule basically starts to run like clockwork from today until the bar exam. And you don't want that schedule shifting too much. I want you running like a fine-tuned machine by the time that date gets here. So it's divide that time up equally, evenly, and spread it across if you possibly can. It's not good to cram. You're not going to see the same kind of results.
Yeah. Tracy, do you agree about this idea of not trying to cram at the end?
I've been around the sun a few times now, and in my experience, things always come up. You can look at this completely clear calendar month of December or January and think, no sweat, I can put it all in there. Things come up. Kids get sick. You get a work project, even though your employer said you were going to be free to study. You get sick. Some things just happen. And so it's so much better to pace yourself than to come up with a cramming session. The test will know it. The test knows more than you think. And the test will know if you've tried to cram.
What's really interesting, though, I can tell you from experience the number of times I've heard students say, I've got so many hours, like my schedule's going to get free come Christmas time. I'm not going to have the same kind of things come up. And I bet probably 99% of the time that student never got going, never picked it up when Christmas time got here, never kept going, never studied any more than they had been. So you can see that kind of beautiful picture of all the time in the world, and you're not going to use it. You got to make the time. You're not going to find it. You got to make it.
It's the Christmas fantasy. So there you go. All right. Mm-hmm. So our message to you is study now. We've been saying this for a couple of months, but now there's a sense of urgency. If you are not studying now, you are close to being behind. I would say we get into behind in the next week or so. So this is when you got to get going. All right. Thanks. We got another question, and this is one that I get some variant of fairly often. Student that's in Puerto Rico said, I'm going to be admitted into an LLM program that will let me take the bar exam anywhere. I'm looking all around. I've been impressed with the Alabama exam, and I saw a note in your materials about the Alabama exam. And the student said, should I take the bar in Alabama? And the answer is, we can't give you individual admissions advice. Alabama is a UBE jurisdiction. You could sit in Alabama, you could sit in New Mexico, you could sit in New York, you have 40 some jurisdictions. You'll take the same test. If Alabama works for you, it's a nice small jurisdiction, pretty friendly. I think, Brianna, am I right that you sat in New Mexico when you took the exam?
I did. And for the very reason, because I was used to taking the Texas bar with about 3,000 other students or whatever taking the exam. And we just said, okay, look, let's put you in a jurisdiction that's got less people, that maybe has a little bit higher pass rate for repeat takers, something that's not too far away, so you're not dealing with an enormous time difference for traveling. And New Mexico just hit all those dots for me.
Yeah. And so find the jurisdiction that works. If you went to an ABA accredited law school, you should be allowed to sit anywhere. If you're doing an LLM in the US from an accredited law school, you'll have some jurisdictions, but not every jurisdiction. So you got to check with the examiners directly on all of this. Don't wait too long. Make sure you jump in there. If you're thinking about the July 2024 exam, this is the time to be doing that research, finding your jurisdiction. But I'll also say this, regardless of the jurisdiction, the test and the preparation is exactly the same. So go ahead and get registered and start your studies now. Don't wait for that. Lots of stuff going on there, lots of people thinking about that. Somebody wrote to me and said, is it too late to start photo reading? The answer is no, it's not too late at all. You've got plenty of time. Photo reading will take just a few hours to learn while you're studying for the bar. So it's a very simple process to do that. We also got lots of practical questions about how do you photo read? And then related to that, we often get the question, can you photo read digitally? And the answer is yes. You just look over the top of your computer screen or the top of your laptop. And Tracy, it was fun to watch students in boot camp learning to photo read digitally, wasn't it?
It was. I was sitting behind everybody so I could see everybody's digital tablets. Very different ways to go about it. But once they started getting it, it was fun to see how fast they could scroll through those pages.
Yeah, and we had people reading the torts outline, photo reading the torts outline in under 5 minutes. And believe it or not, in boot camp, they were photo reading before 10 a.m., which I thought was good. I always like that when it happens. Yeah, you can learn photo reading. And we answered a lot of those at boot camp. But one of the questions we got that I thought was applicable generally was that a student was talking about, can I photo read after I've done the audio, after I've done the lectures, for example, and I've taken notes and I've put those notes in my materials? The answer to that question is you should photo read first the material, then you should mind map it, and there's time built into the schedule to do that. Then you photo read again, and then you watch the lecture. And I prefer that you let the lecture just run and make some marginal notes as you need them, and then add to your mind map after the lecture, then photo read a third time before you do your practice questions, and then mind map those answer explanations, and then photo read a fourth time before you do the essay in that subject, and then mind map that. So you're probably talking 4 to 6 or 7 times that you're photo reading an outline in that first pass. Does that sound about right to you, Brianna?
Absolutely. Every time you're shifting your focus from doing something in an area, go ahead and just plan on photo reading that outline. I probably at the end of the day photo read every single outline, I don't know, 75 to 100 times, just by passing through every single time before I shifted gears to a new topic or a new subject.
And then mind mapping, and then photo reading before you watch the lecture or listen to the lecture. There's no harm to doing this. The more you layer on top, the better you're doing. And I think 75 to 100 photo reads of an outline is about the average of what students do. I'll also say this, when it comes to photo reading, we talked about it this weekend at boot camp. You got to trust it. You just have to trust it. It doesn't feel normal or natural or good to you. And yet we had guest speakers that came in, past boot campers, and they all said, you just got to trust it, it works. And once you start to do that, you start to see the results. I say it's not like a light switch that you turn on and off. It's more like a dimmer switch, and it just gets brighter and brighter as you're working and getting more comfortable with it. Don't mess with the structure. Structure works, and I think it's important. And I don't want you wasting your energy thinking about that. I just want you to follow what we've got there for you. It's the preferred path, and we know that it works. All right. I got a lot of these kinds of messages this week. People were saying, I really think I need some personal coaching, but I'm waiting to see if I can sign up and how am I going to pay for it? I wanted to just let you know that we've done a couple of things with personal coaching pricing that I think are pretty helpful. The first is that we've now signed up with Affirm, Klarna, and Afterpay. Those are companies that are called buy now, pay later. And so on the order form, when you're ready to order personal coaching, you can select that option under cards and more, and you can check all three of them out. And we actually had a student that was able to put their package on an 18-month payment plan with Klarna, which I thought was really cool. So that's one option for you that makes it pretty affordable. The other is that if you're not eligible for Klarna, Afterpay, or Affirm, and I'm not sure anybody would fall into this category, but if you are, you can reach out to us, and we have a 12-month payment plan that does raise your price slightly so that you can start in right away and get that coaching. But personal coaching makes a difference, doesn't it, Tracy? You did the essay writing with our boot camp, and I think you talked to them a little bit about the importance of coaching.
I did. I think that there isn't any substitute for having personal coaching. Your coach has an opportunity to really get to see your style and to see where your growing edges are. That's not very easy to tell in a group coaching call. But working with you, we don't have a set agenda for how we do this. We listen to you and we watch how you are progressing in your writing. We answer other questions that you have and maybe steer you towards other intensive workshops. But it allows us to walk alongside you and conform what we're doing to what you need. You can't get that in any other program, and you can't get that anywhere else in our program. So I said to every single one of the boot camp, as I was looking at their first tries at essay writing, that personal coaching would be a good option for you. And I mean that not just for boot campers, but for anybody in this program. You have this available. You have some really great coaches here. Brianna and Amanda both took this course and passed the bar. And Bobka too passed the bar, and he's available for group coaching for you. Jackson wrote all of this stuff. He passed the bar, surprised everyone in the family, but he actually passed the bar. I passed the bar. Yes, it was last century, but I passed the bar. So we all have the success that you need to be able to have your own success story. Yeah. And with these payment options, there's really no reason why you can't do it.
Yeah. I also want to point out that there are other courses out there that say they're going to grade your essays. And what they mean by grade your essays is they hand it to a gig employee who may be driving Uber by the day. And they say, here's a checklist, and just mark off the checklist and send back the checklist. And you pay as much for that service as you pay for individual coaching with our coaches. If you are trying to get this level of individual coaching in a big box bar review where it is available, you would pay upwards of $5,000. And in our course, you're talking about $2,000 and nowhere near the quality from these other courses that we're offering. So it is a real value. And in general, we see students that get personal coaching tend to do better than the ones that just try and figure it out on their own. And finally, if you're one of those people that says, I can figure it out on my own, let me just ask you, if you're already practicing law, what's your hourly billing rate? And then figure out what it's going to cost you in opportunity cost to spend 3 hours trying to figure out if your essay is correct versus letting one of our coaches work with you for 30 minutes and figure it out and get it improved. So there's lots of reasons to do personal coaching, and we hope you'll take advantage of it. Now, when should you start it? If you're taking the February exam, you should begin now. If you're taking the July exam, you can sign up for personal coaching and we will work with you. You probably won't get into much of your coaching until after the first of the year, but certainly possible. And we won't turn you away if you want to start talking with us now. But sooner is better than later. And if you're a February bar taker, don't get too deep into the year before you start trying to set up your coaching. It's not that we don't have the capacity, we do. It's that you're going to be pushing it really hard. And if you start now, you can go basically one call a week and be in pretty good shape. And Brianne, that's about the right schedule, isn't it?
Absolutely. Definitely. About one per week. You'll fine tune your skills. And I just on a final note here, if you're taking the February bar, you're just a couple of months away from getting to embark on the best journey of your life as licensed attorneys. So invest in yourself. I think the personal coaching, aside from photo reading, might be the number one tool that I think Celebration Bar Review has to offer that is going to make a difference. Invest in yourself. If you'd buy it for your kids, invest in it for yourself, buy it for yourself. Don't waste another minute trying to spin your head around whether or not you're doing it right or whether or not you're following FLA. Get that feedback. So I can't encourage you guys enough just to do it.
All right. I think this brings us to Tracy talking about taking stock and vision boards. I'm excited to see what you've got. So let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jack. Yesterday, I sat down and did what I always do on my birthday month. My birthday was last week. I take stock. I take stock of where I am, where I have most recently been, and where I want to go in the next year. This has become more important to me as I'm now, as Jackson has said, I'm going to have a surgery a week from today. And honestly, I'm anxious about it. I know it'll all go well, but I've done my work. I've done what I call my prehab. I've been working out. I've been working on my mindset. I've been working on reading the materials and photo reading the materials that I need to have, and even mind mapping some of them so that I know what I'm supposed to be doing going forward in my recovery. It's a good way to examine again your why when you take stock. We ask you early on, if you're in any kind of coaching call with us, what is your why? Why do you want to pass the bar exam? Why do you want to practice law? Why do you want to be admitted to the bar wherever you are taking the exam? What is that going to mean for you? What is that going to mean for your clients? What is that going to mean for the world, really? Because you're walking into public service. This isn't a private thing. And for me, it's good for me to look back at the grief that I've had in the last year. What are things I didn't do so well? What are things I didn't accomplish? What are the calendar things that I thought I was going to have plenty of time to work on that I didn't? And then also, where do I have moments of pride for the last year? What did I do well? What did I accomplish? What did I find out about myself? What did I learn about others that are close to me? And how was I a better citizen because of it? I listened to what Brianna and Amanda said a couple of weeks ago, and I found so much wisdom in what they said. Amanda said, "What didn't you commit to last time you took the bar?" That is a great question for taking stock. We asked that of the boot campers as well. What didn't you commit to? We're talking about things that are available like personal coaching, workshops, these group coaching calls, even this Q&A. What didn't you commit to last time that you are ready to commit to this time so that you can pass the bar this time? And then Brianna said something a couple of weeks ago, and she reiterated it today. She said, you have to be willing to do the hard things. This is not something that you can just nonchalantly say, hey, I'm going to clear my calendar for January and I'll be ready for the February bar. You have to be willing to set your schedule and to stick with it. And that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing. Because other things get in the way, other opportunities sound like much more fun than sitting and studying, but you've got to be willing to do those things. She said there's no substitute for doing the work. And that's been what I've found my whole career. in law. There was never any substitute for doing the work. And I won many cases, not because I'm the brightest attorney ever, not because I had the best facts or the best witnesses. I won a lot of cases because I did the work, and I outperformed the other attorney because I was more prepared. I was ready. I knew my why. I knew my why for why I wanted to win the case. And I knew my why for being in the courtroom in the first place. And when I was a young judge and I didn't know anything about what I was doing, I had a lot of hard work to do, and there was no substitute for it. So yesterday, because I'm having some anxiety, just to be totally transparent about this surgery, I went old school and I made what is called a vision board. And this is not very artistic, because I am not very artistic, but it does the trick. I put just 2 pieces of paper together. And then on the left-hand side, which was anxiety, you see the lime green background, and that actually looks like tentacles. It has lots of barbed edges on it. And I put that down. And then on the right-hand side, I put more of a free-flowing cloud-like blue, off blue color, teal color. And I pasted those on first with just some regular glue. So the left side was my anxiety and the right side was surrender and acceptance. And then I just went through a popular magazine. This happened to be the Thanksgiving edition of Better Homes and Gardens, and also the Colorado Lawyer. And I just turned off my conscious mind. Those of you who went to boot camp know what we're talking about here. I turned off my conscious mind, which is the mind that was feeling all the anxiety. And I let my unconscious mind, the mind that knows that everything's going to be okay, that knows what I need, what I really need to go to work. And everything that I had cut out of the magazine made it onto this vision board. But what I noticed was that I was having trouble filling up the anxious side. I was finding much more fun and many more things that I wanted on the acceptance and surrender side. And my version of Wonder Woman is in the middle. No, I don't look like that. No, I've never looked like that. No, I will never look like that again, but I can certainly vision that when I am doing all my rehab work. This took me about 45 minutes to just go through the magazine when I was doing something else, like watching TV, and just letting things jump out at me. And then it took me about another 45 minutes to put it together yesterday. And I actually put it on Facebook because there's a whole host of witnesses that will help me have good thoughts for me in my surgery. It's interesting, if you look at this, how many of these actually apply to studying for the bar, don't they? We're talking about starting the day. We're talking about balance. Brianna talked about that. We talked about saving a seat for you at the table, that you are always welcome to get into personal coaching and we will always have room for you, that there's promise. It's going to be great. The next level, let's make some big wishes come true. I love that one. And I'm not sure why I waited so long to get it set up. Wonder about that and how that might apply to you. And then things that stress me, that I'm going to be overwhelmed about, I put on the left side, on my anxiety side, and now I can let them go. You might want to try something like this. I found at the end of this project that my anxiety was much, much lower. I found that my unconscious mind did come forward and promised me that it's going to be great. And I think you might find the same thing. I know it's old school, but it is a really good way to engage your non-thinking brain, your subconscious brain. And sometimes old school, like a friend of mine said, sometimes old school is the right school. There you go. Take stock. It's a good time to take stock. You have 3 months and a little bit of time. Spend some time this week taking stock, answering those questions, maybe doing a project like this yourself.
Thanks, Judge Tracy. That's very cool stuff. I've done vision boards for years. I love them. The fun part is when you pull them out after a while and you look at them again, you go, wow, that happened and that happened and that. And I remember, Brianna, when you were studying, you had stuff all over the wall, didn't you?
Oh, I did. And so I think Pinterest is still a thing. So I had my Pinterest board. It was called When I Pass the Bar. And it's nothing that you put on that board gets to be too big. You get to decide how big your dreams are going to be and what you're willing to go after and what you're willing to sacrifice to get it. I think vision boards are fantastic.
Yeah, so dream big. We are going to be away next week. We will be we'll be back in 2 weeks. We thank you all for being here today. We're excited to have you here. I know people are starting to gear up and really get going, and post boot camp really roaring to go and get ready for the 2024 exams. To all of you, we wish you a really good study week or two. Don't stop studying. Keep going. This is the time. So with that, we're going to say goodbye, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.